My husband walked out on me the day our little boy was declared paralyzed. 6 years later, he showed up at my door with his mistress, ready to laugh at the wreck he'd left behind. But the second I opened that door and they saw my son, their laughter died on their lips. Before we get there, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe so this channel can keep growing and bringing you more stories like this one. It began on a gray Thursday afternoon when the sky over our cramped rented room felt as heavy as my chest. That morning, a pediatric neurologist had told me my 2-year-old son, Ethan, had a rare nerve disorder. The prognosis is poor, he'd said gently. He'll need therapy for life. It's going to be very expensive. Back home, Ethan slept on our narrow bed, breathing softly, unaware his future had just been stamped impossible. Across the room, my husband Daniel wasn't searching for treatments or holding my hand. He was packing a suitcase, his best shirts, his leather jacket, his new cologne. He looked like a man going on vacation, not a father whose child had been sentenced to a wheelchair. "Daniel," I whispered, my hijab still damp from 3 days of crying. "Where are you going? You haven't said a word since the diagnosis." He snapped the suitcase shut and finally met my eyes, colder than I'd ever seen them. "I'm leaving, Maya. I can't do this." My heart clenched. "Leaving? We need money for Ethan's therapy. We can't just—" "To hell with therapy," he cut in. "Ever since that kid was born, our life's been a mess. And now what? A cripple? You expect me to work myself to death for a crippled child?" Every word sliced deeper. "He's your son," I choked. "Your own flesh and blood." He snorted. "My son? I'm not even sure he is mine." Then he opened the cabinet where I kept our last hope and reached for the brown envelope inside. It held $200, the money I'd scraped together by selling my wedding ring and my mother's bracelet to pay the deposit for Ethan's first therapy. "No!" I cried, stumbling toward him. "Please, that's Ethan's therapy money. Take my phone, my clothes, anything, but not that." He shoved me aside so hard my back hit the wall. He slipped the envelope into his pocket, grabbed our bank book and headed for the door. On the way out, he glanced once at Ethan's limp little legs and muttered, "Dead weight, nothing but a burden." Outside, a shiny sedan idled at the curb. His secretary, Vanessa, rolled down the window, lipstick red, smile cruel. "Bye, Maya," she sang. "Take care of your crippled kid. Daniel and I have a life to enjoy." The car sped off, spraying muddy water across my face as it carried away my husband, our money, and the future I thought we had. By morning, the bank account was empty. The fridge held nothing. He'd even taken the last box of formula. Rent was 3 months late. After a week of begging the corner shop for credit, the landlord arrived with movers. Our mattress, pots, and plastic dresser were tossed into the muddy street like trash. Neighbors stared from their doors, some pitying, some smirking. That evening, with Ethan strapped to my chest and a backpack of clothes over my shoulders, I sat beside our belongings in the gutter and realized we were homeless. I walked until my legs shook and finally found a small neighborhood mosque. We slept on its front steps that night, on flattened cardboard from the trash. The cold stone pressed into my back, and my son burned with fever against my chest. In the morning, an elderly cleaner, whom everyone called Grandma Noor, pressed a cup of sweet tea into my hand. "Leave the boy with me for a few hours," she said gently. "Go look for work." I kissed Ethan's hot forehead, promised I'd come back, and went to the market asking every stall, every shop, "Do you have work? Anything. I can wash dishes, scrub floors, iron clothes." Most shook their heads, until a tiny eatery finally said yes. $10 a day to wash dishes in the alley. No children allowed. I begged Grandma Noor to babysit Ethan each morning for half my pay, and she nodded. Before dawn, I prayed, got Ethan ready, carried him to the mosque, then ran to the restaurant. My hands blistered in greasy water. My back screamed. But every night I forced myself to save a few crumpled bills for something more than just staying alive. 2 weeks later, a rumor reached me about an old nerve therapist on the edge of town, a man named Mr. Harris who charged little but was said to work wonders. One blistering afternoon, I strapped Ethan to my back and walked miles along dusty roads until we found his wooden shack. A line of people with twisted limbs waited outside. When our turn came, Mr. Harris, thin but wiry, examined Ethan's legs with rough hands. "These nerves have been sleeping too long," he muttered. "We have to shock them awake." Before I could ask what that meant, he began pressing, twisting, forcing Ethan's stiff legs to bend. My son screamed like his bones were breaking. I lurched forward, but Mr. Harris glared. "If you can't stand his crying, he'll never walk. Pain means the nerves are alive. Do you want him crawling forever?" We went back 3 times a week. I carried Ethan there and home again until my spine felt like it might snap. At night, on the mosque steps, and later in a damp single-room shack I managed to rent with extra money from ironing, I copied Mr. Harris's movements. I massaged and stretched Ethan's legs while he whimpered. My heart shattered with each cry, but under the pain something harder began to grow. "You will walk," I whispered into his hair. "I don't care what anyone says. We will fight fate." 2 years crawled by. Ethan learned to sit without support. His paper-thin legs slowly filled out. His toes twitched when I tickled them. His arms grew strong from dragging himself along the floor, and his eyes turned into cameras, soaking in every detail of the tiny world visible from our doorway. Because he couldn't run, he watched. Me ironing. Kids racing through the alley. A stray cat sleeping on our roof. Nothing escaped him. One afternoon, I found him drawing in the dust. They weren't baby scribbles. He'd sketched that cat, the children, even my hunchback, with quick, sure lines. In that moment, I realized that while his body was trapped, his mind was wide open. He needed a bigger window to the world. So I started saving again. This time not for therapy, but for something different. For 6 months, I cut my own food in half, surviving on leftover rice and sauce. I hid every coin of change under our thin mattress until I had just enough for a battered second-hand tablet with a cracked corner and a screen that still glowed. That night, I placed the tablet in Ethan's lap like it was made of gold. His calm eyes exploded with light. "For me?" he whispered. "For you," I said. "To learn? But promise me you won't just play games." I laugh at myself now. I downloaded free drawing apps and a few simple educational games. Within a week, he'd mastered them all. Within 2, he was bored. "These games are bad, Mom," he grumbled. "The monsters can't even jump properly." Exhausted, I joked, "Then make your own game. Make a better one." He looked at me, dead serious. "How?" That night, after he slept, I sat in the mosque courtyard stealing weak Wi-Fi and typed "How to make a game for kids" into the search bar. I found a simple visual coding app and downloaded it for him. From that day on, Ethan disappeared into a world that finally fit his brain. He sat cross-legged on our mattress, fingers flying across the cracked screen, first drawing characters, then making them move. "No, that's wrong," he'd mutter. "If the monster hits this, it should go back to the start, not die." I didn't understand his code, but I saw the fire in his eyes. One night, after an especially brutal session with Mr. Harris, I rubbed Ethan's aching legs with eucalyptus oil and whispered, "Come on, sweetheart. Fight it. Your legs can do this." Leaning against the wall, he scowled at a tiny square that refused to jump. "Nothing works," he burst out. "My legs won't move. This character won't jump." "You always figure it out," I said softly. "You can do this." He squeezed his eyes shut and poured everything into that moment, and 2 miracles happened at once. On the screen, the little square finally leapt cleanly over the obstacle. Under my hands, Ethan's right leg kicked, not a random jerk, a deliberate, living kick. I froze, then started shaking. He stared from the tablet to his leg, then to my face. "Mom," he whispered. My leg moved. I dropped the tablet and wrapped him in my arms, sobbing with a wild joy I'd never felt before. "You did it. You're going to walk, Ethan. I swear you are." After that, therapy shifted from forcing movement to training it. Mr. Harris built a bamboo walker, and every day Ethan stumbled, fell, bruised, cried, and stood up again. Like the hero in his own games, the one who falls 100 times, but rises 101. While his body fought, his brain raced far ahead, outgrowing the little tablet that had first opened his world. A real keyboard and screen were far beyond what a dishwasher should dream of. But I still had one piece of jewelry, a tiny gold earring, the last thing my mother had left me, hidden from Daniel all those years. Selling it felt like cutting off a piece of myself. But I did it. For a handful of cash, I bought an ancient, heavy laptop with a yellowed shell and a curved screen. Ugly, but alive. When I set it on our mattress, Ethan stared like I'd landed a spaceship. "Thank you, Mom," he breathed, fingers hovering above the keys like a pianist. That night, while he slept off the pain of walking practice, I opened the laptop under the mosque's flickering lights and taught myself in broken English what game assets were, where developers bought them, and how online payments worked. By day, Ethan drew knights, monsters, and treasure chests in a cheap sketchbook, then turned them into pixel sprites on the laptop. I filled a notebook with new words: client, invoice, deadline. After 2 months, we had our first collection. A fiery knight with several moves, a few monsters, and a set of coins and chests. Late one night, sitting on cardboard outside the mosque to catch a better signal, I created an account on a small site where indie developers buy art. I named it Maya Design, uploaded Ethan's work, and, terrified, priced the whole pack at $3, the cheapest on the site. The first day, nothing. The second, nothing. A week passed. Every night, Ethan asked, "Did anyone buy it?" Every night, I forced a smile. "Not yet. Maybe they haven't seen it. Let's make something even better." I was close to giving up when, around 2 in the morning, as I ironed a stranger's faded dress, my old phone chimed. "Congratulations, Maya Design," the email read. "You have received a payment of $3 for Pixel Fire Night Asset Pack. Buyer location, Canada." I slid to the floor and cried into the warm cloth beneath my iron. It wasn't the amount. $3 barely bought 2 days of formula. It was the proof that somewhere far away, a stranger thought my son's art was worth paying for. I shook Ethan awake, showed him the email, and watched the biggest smile I'd ever seen spread across his face. The next day, I withdrew the money and didn't spend a cent on treats. I bought an extra therapy session with Mr. Harris, the best vitamins I could afford, and ointment for Ethan's bruised knees. If this story has already hit you in the heart, tap that like button and share it. Someone out there might need to hear that one impossible child can change everything. From that tiny $3 sale, Ethan and I built a different life. I bought a small data package so we no longer depended on the mosque's shaky Wi-Fi, and I spent my nights studying bigger marketplaces. I realized his work was as good as pack selling for $20, $50, even $100. Fear had made me underprice my son. That was about to change. I asked Ethan for a new set. Robots this time. Heroes and villains. His eyes lit up. For a week, he worked like a tiny professional, turning pages of sketches into crisp pixel art for a collection we called Cyber War. That night, I uploaded Cyber War and, hands trembling, set the price at $50. I nearly changed it back to $3. Then I forced myself to hit publish and tried to sleep. The next morning, an email arrived. "You have received a payment of $50. I laughed, cried, and almost dropped the phone. An hour later, a second message landed in our inbox and changed everything. An offer from Mark Johnson, lead developer at Starlake Games. He asked if we'd take a $1,000 contract for 10 more robot characters in Ethan's style. When the money arrived a week later, the first thing I did was not buy new clothes or a TV. I took Ethan to the best private hospital in the city. A specialist studied his x-rays, marveled at how Mr. Harris had kept his muscles alive, and said, "With proper physiotherapy, braces, and nutrition, he can learn to walk normally." "We'll do it," I answered without asking the cost. For the first time, money wasn't an impossible mountain. It was a tool in my hand. Next, I went to a computer store and bought a powerful laptop and a digital drawing tablet, so Ethan could draw straight onto the screen. Our cramped room looked surreal. One corner held a smoking burner and piles of laundry. The other glowed with equipment worth more than everything Daniel had ever owned. The $1,000 job took 2 weeks. Mark was thrilled, sent us a bonus, and immediately offered another contract, this time for $3,000. More clients followed: Canada, Germany, Japan. To them, Maya Design was just a reliable studio with great art and perfect deadlines. They had no idea the lead artist was a 6-year-old whose legs still shook when he stood too long, and the project manager was a former dishwasher learning English from a dictionary app. Our income stabilized. After 6 months, I walked into the restaurant, handed my apron to the owner, and said, "Thank you for everything. Today's my last day." I returned my ironing clients' baskets one by one, then signed papers for a small, clean two-bedroom house with a little yard. We renamed the business Bright Star Studio and registered it in Ethan's name. In that house, sunlight finally streaming through solid walls instead of leaks, Ethan turned 7. One afternoon during a home therapy session, his physiotherapist stepped back and said, "Try standing by yourself." Ethan wobbled in the middle of the living room, no braces, no walker. "Mom," he called, eyes huge, "look, I'm standing." I dropped the dish towel and opened my arms. "Come here." He took a step, then another, then a third, and fell straight into my hug. We both laughed and sobbed at once. Years of exhaustion and pain condensed into that moment. After that, our lives sped up. Ethan didn't stop at drawing characters. He began designing whole levels, learning enough code to control every movement himself. We rented a small office and hired 2 young artists. At 8 years old, he became Bright Star Studios' creative director. Clients started asking for Ethan by name. Without knowing, he still sometimes fell asleep clutching a battered stuffed dinosaur. Exactly 6 years after Daniel slammed the door on us, I stood on the terrace of our new house. Not rented, bought in cash. A 2-story home in a quiet, leafy neighborhood with a wide garden and a small pool out back. I watched Ethan in the yard, not dragging himself across concrete, but running full speed, chasing a soccer ball toward a child-sized goal. He sprinted, kicked, jumped, laughing like he'd never known what pain was. There was no trace of the limp little boy doctors had written off. "Mom," he shouted, "our client from Japan loved the new level. The bonus just arrived." "Thank God," I smiled. "Shower and lunch, then we'll talk about the project from Germany." He saluted jokingly and dashed past me into the house, all long limbs and easy grace where there had once been dead weight in my arms. My hijab was soft silk now. My hands had healed from years of dishwater and irons. For the first time in a long time, our life felt full. Of work, of peace, of love. That was when the doorbell rang. I walked to the living room and glanced at the grainy black and white image on the intercom. 2 figures stood at the gate, a man and a woman, thinner and more tired than I remembered, but unmistakable. I would have known them even in hell. Daniel and Vanessa. My heart pounded, not with fear, but with a cold, patient fury I'd been carrying for 6 years. I watched him fidget with the lapels of a cheap suit that hung too loose on his shoulders. I watched her tug at a bright red dress that looked more gaudy than glamorous in front of my wrought iron gate. I pressed the speaker button. "Who are you here to see?" They both jumped. "Maya," Daniel stammered. "It's me, Daniel. We just came to visit. It's been a long time. We heard you live here now. Can we come in for a bit?" The word visit tasted rotten. I turned my head. "Ethan, go play in your room for a while, sweetheart. I have guests." "Okay, Mom," he called from upstairs. I waited until I heard his door close, then pressed the button to open the gate. On the screen, I watched their faces shift from arrogance to shock as the tall metal gate slid aside by itself. They clearly hadn't expected automatic gates. I turned off the monitor and went to open the front door. We faced each other for the first time in 6 years. Daniel's jaw tightened as his gaze swept from my clothes to the entryway. Envy and raw greed burned through his surprise. Vanessa's eyes crawled over my silk hijab, my tailored blouse, my long skirt. I saw the moment she realized she'd backed the wrong life. "You look different," Daniel managed. "Time changes everything," I replied. "Come in." I walked into the living room without looking back, giving them a full view of the high ceiling, the leather sofas, the huge abstract painting that cost more than everything they'd stolen from me combined. They stepped inside like thieves sneaking into a palace. "Wow," Vanessa muttered. "Look at this place." I sat in an armchair facing the sofa. "So," I said, "after 6 years, what brings you here? You don't look like people who came just to be polite." Daniel cleared his throat, arranging his face into something like remorse. "Maya, I know I made mistakes. I regret what I did." "Do you regret leaving us?" I asked. "Or regret leaving before I looked like this?" He flinched. "It's not like that. Our business went bad. Vanessa's been sick. We lost everything. You went bankrupt, I said. It wasn't a question. Vanessa's cheeks flushed. We're fine, she snapped. I smiled thinly. Really? Then why is the sedan you drove here still wearing a leasing company final notice sticker on the back window? Their faces drained of color. The masks slipped. We need help, Daniel finally admitted, his voice dropping into the tone of a beggar. We heard you remarried. Your new husband must be a good man. I bet he doesn't know everything about your past. Vanessa leaned forward, eyes glittering. I'm sure he has no idea you already had a child, she said. And not just any child. That kind of child. There it was, the card they'd come to play. So you're here to blackmail my imaginary husband? I asked. Not blackmail, Daniel said quickly, just compensation. Think of it as paying us to keep our mouths shut. Shut about what? I pressed. Vanessa smirked. About Ethan, she said. About your crippled son. Your rich husband wouldn't be thrilled to find out he married a woman hiding a disabled kid, would he? We've kept quiet for 6 years. That has to be worth something. Daniel leaned in, greed now naked on his face. Give us, say, $35,000, he said. It's nothing to you now. Pay it, and we disappear. We'll pretend he never existed. Once upon a time, he'd stolen $200, the price of Ethan's first therapy, and left us to starve. Now he named $35,000 like he was ordering coffee. I smiled slowly. Their confidence faltered. Why are you smiling? Vanessa snapped. Because you're exactly the same as the day you left, I said. Still stupid, still greedy, still blind. Daniel shot to his feet. Watch your mouth. We came here politely. Don't push it. Where is he, Maya? Where are you hiding that kid? In some back room? In a care home? Vanessa stood too. Yeah, let's see him. I bet you told your husband the boy died. Easier than admitting you have a little secret. Every word they spoke was gasoline they poured over their own heads. All I had to do was light the match. You really want to see Ethan? I asked. Of course, Daniel sneered. We want to see if he's even still alive. Fine, I said. You can see him, but he's not in some back room. He's in his office, upstairs. Vanessa scoffed. Office? What does he do? Fold pill boxes? I didn't answer. I just turned and climbed the stairs, my steps silent on the thick carpet, their shoes clicking on the marble behind me. At the end of the hallway, I stopped in front of the double doors to Ethan's studio and rested my hand on the handle. Once you see what's inside, I said softly, there's no going back. Enough drama, Daniel snapped. Open it! I swung the doors wide. They rushed past me, grinning, ready to enjoy whatever pitiful scene they imagined, only to have their smiles strangled the second they crossed the threshold. They had expected medicine bottles and a twisted body on a bed. Instead, they stepped into a bright, wide studio. One wall was glass framing the city skyline. Sunlight spilled across shelves of books, framed awards, and expensive collectible figures. In the center stood a massive L-shaped desk crowded with 3 ultra-wide monitors, a glowing computer tower, 2 drawing tablets, a studio microphone, and a mechanical keyboard. In the chair sat a boy with his back to us, headphones on, fingers flying. Ethan, I called. He didn't hear. Ethan, I said a little louder. He paused, slid his headphones down, and answered, 1 second, Mom, I'm rendering. Then he spun his chair around, stood up, and walked toward me with an easy, balanced stride. Straight, strong, 8 years old, and nothing like the limp toddler Daniel had abandoned. He slipped his hand into mine and studied the strangers at his door with polite confusion. Sorry, Mom, he said. I didn't know we had visitors. The silence in the room grew so thick I could taste it. Daniel went white. His knees shook. Vanessa covered her mouth, eyes bulging. Who is this? Daniel croaked. Your husband's kid? He looks like you, Vanessa hissed. Daniel, he looks exactly like you did when you were young. Ethan, I said calmly, this is Mr. Daniel and Ms. Vanessa, and you two, this is Ethan, my son. As if on cue, a cheerful voice chimed from his computer. Render complete. Project Tokyo ready for upload. Ethan glanced back at the screens. Perfect. Sorry, Mom. I have to send this bill to the client in Japan. They've been waiting. He jogged back to his chair, fingers dancing as he zipped files and hit send. Client in Japan, I repeated softly, turning back to Daniel and Vanessa. Their faces had shifted from disbelief to something uglier. Raw regret. I never remarried, I said. There is no rich husband. Every brick of this house, every computer in this room, every car in the garage, paid for by the child you called a burden, by his brain, his talent, his work, while I healed the legs you said were worthless. Daniel's face crumpled, not with love, but with the horrible realization that he'd thrown away a living goldmine. He stumbled forward, hand outstretched. Ethan, he whispered. My son, my boy, you can walk. His fingers reached not to hug, but to touch, to claim. Ethan instinctively stepped behind me, gripping my blouse. Don't touch him, I said. My voice was calm, but sharp enough to cut. He's my son, Daniel shouted, panic cracking his words. My blood! You can't keep him from me! Before I could answer, a smaller voice spoke. Mom. Ethan stepped out from behind me and faced Daniel directly. His eyes were clear, not full of hate, just a cold kind of curiosity. Ethan, Daniel said quickly, seizing the moment. My son, Dad is here now. Dad came back for you. Ethan's gaze didn't soften. You're not my dad, he said. 5 simple words, heavier than any slap. Daniel recoiled. What did you say? My mom told me my dad died a long time ago, Ethan replied. He died the day he stole my therapy money and left me to die. Daniel's face twisted. She lied, he rasped. She turned you against me. Ethan shook his head. I heard it myself. When you came through the gate today, I was on the stairs. I heard you ask, how's that cripple doing? I heard you say I was probably still crawling on the floor. I heard you talk about me rotting somewhere. His voice trembled now, with anger instead of fear. My dad would never call me a cripple, he said. My dad would never laugh about me rotting. My dad, he turned and pointed at me, is my mom. She carried me to every therapy session. She stayed up all night helping me practice. She worked until her hands bled so I could eat and learn. You're just a bad man who came into my house. Daniel sagged, destroyed not by me, but by the child he'd thrown away. I rested my hand on Ethan's shoulder. You heard him, I said quietly. 6 years ago, you sold your right to call yourself his father for $200 and a ride with your girlfriend. That deal is final. I walked to the intercom and pressed the button. Security, please come up to the main office, I said. We have 2 intruders disturbing me and my son. 2 guards appeared in the doorway moments later. Vanessa exploded. Intruders? You call us beggars? She screamed, lunging at me. One guard twisted her arm behind her back. The other helped Daniel to his feet. Let go, she shrieked. Daniel, do something. That's your son. That's our fortune. Daniel just stared at Ethan with empty eyes. The game was over, and he knew it. Take them out, I said. What followed was the most satisfying scene I've ever watched. Vanessa cursed, spat, and threatened as she was dragged downstairs. Daniel shuffled like a broken puppet. From an upstairs window, we watched the guards shove them out the front door. Their voices echoed in the quiet street. You'll regret this, Vanessa howled. Maya, you'll be cursed. Daniel's voice cracked. Ethan, please, I'm your father. The tall iron gate slid shut behind them with a soft final hiss. Out on the pavement, their karma finished its work. Vanessa, seeing Daniel sprawled on the asphalt, didn't help him up. She stalked over and slapped him so hard I heard it. This is your fault, she screamed, pounding his chest. You promised me an easy life. That, she jabbed a finger toward our house, should have been ours, but you threw it away because you were too lazy to take care of that boy. Daniel tried weakly to shield himself. I've suffered with you for 6 years, he pleaded. Isn't that enough? Not enough to fix your stupidity, she spat. I'm done, we're finished. She spat in his face, stormed off to call a cab, and left him kneeling alone on the pavement, broke, abandoned, and empty-handed. I let the curtain fall. The show was over. Back in Ethan's studio, the only sound was the soft hum of computers. I knelt in front of him and took his shoulders gently. Are you okay, sweetheart? I'm sorry you had to see all of that. He was quiet for a moment, then smiled, a small smile that washed the last trace of bitterness from my heart. He reached up and wiped a tear from my cheek. "I'm fine, Mom," he said. "They're just bad people. I'm not afraid of them. I have you." He hugged me hard, and I hugged him back, breathing in the warm, familiar smell of my miracle child. The boy everyone once said would never walk or do anything with his life. When he finally let go, his eyes were bright again for another reason entirely. "Mom," he said seriously, "I didn't finish telling you my new game idea. It's about a warrior queen who has to protect her little prince from shadow monsters. The monsters keep trying to steal him, but she fights them off and helps him level up until he's stronger than all of them. Cool, right?" I laughed, a deep, free laugh I hadn't heard from myself in years. "That's amazing," I said, ruffling his hair. "Tell me everything." I sat on the sofa while he talked about levels and spells and boss fights. And I listened, really listened, as the ghosts of our past finally faded into background noise. Once upon a time, Daniel thought he'd taken everything from me and left me with nothing but a burden. He was wrong. A burden carried with love becomes strength, and that strength turned into art, into a company, into a home, and into the biggest regret of his life. If you're still here at the end of our story, thank you for listening. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who needs hope. And in the comments, tell me this: if you were in Ethan's place, would you have forgiven him?